Surprised anybody wanted to replace me.
Getting started. It's 7 o'clock. Let's go. Good evening. It is Thursday, March 30th, 2023 at 7 p.m. I'd like to officially call to order the North Andover Board of Health. All board members are present and in attendance tonight, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda tonight is the approval of the meeting minutes from February 13th.
I reviewed them, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second?
All in favor?
Oh,
No.
all in favor? Aye.
There you go.
Okay, moving on to new business. Nothing on the agenda for new business, is that correct? Okay, on to old business. Our first item on old business is the plastic bag restriction.
So I didn't think we were first, so I didn't
It's okay.
I didn't set up yet. Just give me 1 sec.
Is this his laptop?
No, this is mine.
Okay, I gotta escape this for a
All
second.
right, sure.
I don't see options for dual display. Are you sure this works?
Has to be dual display? Well, I can just, it doesn't have to be dual, I can see it. As long as I can see it somewhere, I don't have to see it on here.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about, is it's not gonna come through here if this isn't working. Are you sure this works?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've done it before. I do it to my TV at home all the time.
Show menu options in menu and bar. Menu bar when available.
No, there, conference room?
YC conference room?
I don't know
Okay,
what,
DPW?
I don't know what this is.
Yeah, that's not it. Let me try,
Okay. Did you reach for yours?
Is the presentation they're showing what we have paper copies of? Okay.
Nancy's the presentation, what you send us?
There've been a couple minor changes. Should I send it to somebody?
We have
We have printouts, so I didn't know if, well,
No, it's different, definitely different than one we presented already. No, because we're just focusing on what we changed. So it's just a few slides on what we changed from the last time we came in. So it's a completely different presentation, actually.
It's just 8 slides.
It doesn't seem to be detecting this. That's the problem.
Well, I guess we could just talk through it if necessary.
I think we're gonna have to, because that doesn't seem to be detecting that,
That's what it's supposed
yes. I was like, oh, none of
Okay, I think we'll just talk through it.
Okay.
So, my name's Nancy Sarro. Thank you for having us again. This is Keith Connors, he's with me as well from Citizens for Sustainable Living, and Lynn Langton, who's also on our team, is also here. And this, as you know, this is the second time that we're presenting to the Board of Health about the warrant article to restrict single-use disposable plastic bags. So what I'm really, the reason we came back a second time is really to focus on a major change that we made, and also we looked into a couple of the other concerns that the Board of Health had mentioned first time around. So bear with me, as I was expecting you were going to see my PowerPoint. So we're going to talk today about three things. One is the business input that we gathered in the meantime and how we factored that in. Somebody mentioned in the last meeting about in some of the other towns, there's some discretion allowed for the Board of Health with how they treat certain businesses. So we looked into that and we really want to address that. And then there was a question about cost impact to the businesses. So we want to talk a little bit about that. You can't see the slide, but we visited about 20 businesses. And of the 20 businesses that we visited, 11 were outright supportive of the ban. 6 small businesses had concerns or were unwilling to discuss with us. One business owner who has multiple businesses had concerns, and I see that Jim Zanakis is here, so I didn't have his name, but I may as well mention the name since he is here. So he has 3 businesses in town and had some concerns. Primarily around, well, one of the issues is like it's one more regulation on top of other regulations. One business owner was likely supportive, but we need to follow up, and Rocky's Hardware deferred to corporate. And then in addition to those 20, there are many businesses in town that are part of chains that we didn't talk to directly because they already do this in many other towns, such as TJ Maxx, Kohl's, Market Basket, Stop and Shop, CVS. Amongst the businesses that were supportive were Tripoli, Butcher Boy, Perfectos, Restaurants, Shanju, J&M Subs, Boston Chowder Company, and Jimmy's. And the businesses with concerns were mostly the smaller businesses. We determined that smaller businesses, due to less economies of scale, may have a harder time adjusting to the change. We researched other towns, and most do not have a size threshold. For those that do, there is a precedent for using 3,000 square feet, as in Haverhill, Plymouth, and Lowell. We determined that applying a 3,000 square foot threshold is a reasonable compromise, and we built that into the final wording. The result accommodates all those businesses that had concerns, except either because they're too small, except for the one business owner with 3 businesses, where 2 of their 3 businesses would be falling under the threshold and 1 would not. The 3,000 square foot threshold will also reduce the impact on the health department. Before deciding on this threshold, we targeted 35 businesses that we were interested in seeing how big they are. And of those 35 businesses, and these are not any of the large chains, they're all independent businesses, over half of those will fall below the threshold. So it should make less work for the health department to inspect those. Another concern that the board had was that in some towns there's some more discretion with the Board of Health. And we looked into that. We did find that wording for Andover and Haverhill. However, that is not for a permanent exemption. The wording in there is only to give businesses more time. So we didn't find any towns that had a more permanent exemption at the discretion of the health department or the Board of Health. So we elected not to build that in because we are giving businesses about 7 months notice, and then there's another month even beyond that before any fines kick in. So we felt that was enough time. Lastly, the third topic that was raised last time is the cost impact for the businesses. It's really hard for us to do a firm calculation because it depends a lot on the type, size, shape, and quantity of plastic bags currently used, as well as type, size, shape, and quantity of paper bags to be used. And also you have to factor in how many more people are going to start using reusable bags, because we do feel like this will be a culture shift in town, and even and that customers will just get used to using reusable bags. We do have some data that paper bags may cost about twice as much as plastic bags, but this will be mitigated by expected increased use of reusable bags, and by also retailers perhaps getting creative about not automatically putting everything in a bag. Given that many communities around us also have bag restrictions, businesses will not be at a competitive disadvantage compared to those other towns around us and the businesses in those towns. So that's pretty much it. Again, it was just intended to be an update on the questions that were raised last time, and the major change that we made is to apply this only to businesses of 3,000 square feet or more. So we would take any questions, and then we would really hope that you would support this.
I know.
Question. I'm
Sure,
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
okay.
I was just going to say, I know one of the other concerns of the board was just to look into if there's any funding for both businesses and/or the board to help support this change.
Yeah, we did look into that, and we haven't been able to find any grants or anything like that could be used.
Thank you.
Several questions. Looking at the purpose and intent of plastic bag restrictions that were sent to us, you say here that plastic bags are rarely recycled and are not biodegradable. Well, they are biodegradable. This takes hundreds of years, but they are biodegradable. Also, you say here that plastic bags affect human health when they are disposed of by incineration. Would you further elaborate upon that, please?
Yes, when the plastics are burned, there are toxins that go into the air.
Such as?
We have our other
Phthalates.
What's that?
Phthalates.
dioxin, I believe.
Yeah,
we have it in our other-
dioxins.
That's not true. There are three components, three elements primarily in a plastic bag. You have carbon, you have hydrogen, and you may have chlorine, polyvinyl chloride. Okay. When they're burned through incineration, as all municipal waste that is disposed of in our trash here in North Andover, because we have a large incinerator, that incinerator, as well as all the other waste energy facilities in Massachusetts, have sophisticated air pollution controls on them. For example, if you're talking about PVC chlorine, you could end up with acid, hydrochloric. That is removed by the scrubbers, a caustic scrubber. And there are very stringent federal and state requirements on that. If you have any particulate matter, it's removed off in scrubber backhouse. And I'm saying that, by the way, I'm a chemical engineer, but I used to manage many years ago the large waste energy facility here in North Andover. And I still work in this field, and I examine key people in management at these facilities all around the nation. So I take an issue with that. The big problem I see with plastic bags is take a look at the sides of any street right now. They're all over the place. But so is in glass, and so is in metal. People really don't care about the environment. They just throw their stuff all over the place. So I take issue with the problem with incineration. There's even strict limits on dioxin furans. I think it's like 45 picograms per dry standard cubic meter at these facilities. These facilities run within the specifications that have been determined and established by the government. And what do you do when you burn this stuff, by the way? You generate steam, and then you turn the blades of a turbine, and you generate electricity. So it's truly a waste product that is recyclable. And the way that you recycle it is you burn it. And 56% of all waste in Massachusetts is burned in an incinerator. And the rest, if it's not thrown inside the roads, is disposed of in landfills. So I have a problem with much of what you have here, looking at it from the perspective of an engineer that has been in this field of solid waste disposal for virtually all my life. And I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, we appreciate your input. Thank you. You know, our research shows that the toxins, yes, we are aware of the scrubbers, that there can be some toxins that are still released into the air, and then there's also toxins in the fly ash, and the way that the fly ash gets
Fly ash is
disposed of-
neutralized with lime.
Well, we do
It's
have.
immobilized.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your input. You have some expertise in this. We do have some sources that do express some concerns. And then this is not only about the burning, this is also about the creation of the plastic bags themselves. They use fossil fuels. We should be getting off fossil fuels. There's also litter, and they don't get, even though when people do try to dispose of them properly, because they're lightweight, they can fly away very easily, and that's why you do see a lot of places in town where the plastic bags are kind of accumulating, and they will, unlike a paper bag, they will sit there forever, and almost forever, until somebody picks it up, unlike a paper bag that will be degraded.
Do you know what percentage of fossil fuel oil is devoted to the production of plastics?
Yeah, we do.
It's 4%.
I think we had a different number, but.
I believe it's 8 to 10%.
Well, that's not what I read in several articles as of
It's not what I
yesterday.
read in
And
some
only a
articles
portion of
either.
that goes to plastic bags,
Yeah.
a small portion of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a lot of research too. We have a lot of sources, and you know, unfortunately, the sources don't all agree with each other. You can find different things out there, but there are many reasons for this, and it's not just about these things that we're talking about.
And I would disagree that the plastic bags are not harmfully biodegradable. The nanoplastics, the smallest part of it, never goes away and eventually finds its way in the food chain that eventually, you know, we consume.
Well, the plastic in landfill will be disposed of, will decompose aerobically or anaerobically, but it may take hundreds of years, could even take 1,000 years to completely go away. I'm not talking about the nanoplastics, I'm talking about the plastics, period. There's nothing left after
Right.
after
But
hundreds of years.
Thousands is a lot of years. 1,000 years
It-
is a lot
it
of
is.
years, and those nanoplastics exist
But most of
and are
waste
in the environment,
but most
and they're
of waste in
consumable.
Massachusetts is
And
disposed
so,
of in incinerators.
so we appreciate that, but these are the concerns that citizens have around that.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Just a comment about the cost increases you mentioned to businesses. Are those going to be passed on to the customers?
That's up to the business. Some businesses may choose to charge a fee. They may choose to build it in. They may, yeah, it really is up to the business.
Okay. You said they're twice as much as paper, plastic is, paper is twice as much as plastic.
We found one source that says that. Again,
Okay.
there's a lot of variation depending on what exactly people are buying and what they're using and size and all kinds of things. There's
Okay.
many, so it's hard to come up with an exact figure.
How much does it cost per bag? I'm just curious as to what, obviously these businesses go through hundreds of plastic bags. What's the cost of a bag?
Yeah, so the one source that we found showed a 4 cents versus 8 cents, but
Okay.
again, there are so many variables on what sources are being used and what quantities are being purchased. There's just a lot of variation to it.
Okay.
But that's what we had found in
Okay.
one source.
I had never priced out plastic bags before,
Yeah.
so I had no idea.
But again, just to reiterate, that can be mitigated if more people start using reusable bags, and also if the retailers don't automatically throw everything in a bag.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been to CVS recently, but CVS I know is not the issue, it's a big chain, but you can buy a pen and they will throw in a plastic bag. So I think there's other ways to mitigate.
Okay. What were some of the businesses' concerns that they expressed to you?
It seemed to be a little bit about cost, and also just the idea that it's one more regulation to have to deal with.
And we do regulate heavily a lot of these businesses.
Yeah, I understand.
Tobacco's here tonight, we have food here tonight. We're pretty on top of it, but it's a lot for them.
Yeah.
So I understand their pain, trust me, they
Sure.
express that to me all the time. But just wanted to bring that up
Yeah.
and mention that, so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and the hardware store downtown, for example, was concerned that, I guess they get, maybe businesses where people are walking more, they were concerned if someone has to walk away and carry something without a handle. But again, they would be exempt because they're under the size limit, and if people use reusable bags, those bags have handles.
Gotcha. I don't have any questions.
I guess my concern is just the increased stress onto the health department to try to regulate this on an already stressed, between the pandemic and now getting back into normal day-to-day activities. I think that we're asking a lot of them without any increased funding to add any other positions. So that would be my big concern.
Yeah. So I do understand that you have to use a third party, right, for the inspections, is that correct?
For a portion of them,
Yeah, okay. So, we're, I know there's more to it, but we're thinking maybe it's just a checkbox for them on the form. It should be fairly easy to check. It's not a matter of opening refrigerators, checking expiration dates, which I know is some of the stuff that currently gets done. It's a matter of looking at the checkout area and seeing if there's, and I don't want to minimize it, I know there's more to it than that, but, yeah, we're hoping it's not much of a burden.
People call us for everything.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So this would be one more thing that we get calls on.
Yeah.
How many businesses did you say you spoke with?
We visited 20, but when we did some research on the size issue, we looked at about 35, and about half of those were under the limit.
Okay. I guess my concern is we have 139. I feel like 20 is not really that well representative to just get a better sense of what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, we've tried to do more. It's really hard to reach the business owners in some cases, and we actually tried to do more than that, but that's the number that we actually made contact with. And, we're a small team, so it was, we had to be a little bit realistic about how many we could go to.
The biggest concerns that I have is certainly the same that you have, is this will put additional burden on our department in many respects. We're already overtaxed and stressed. And number two, again, because all our waste here that is disposed of in our trash is incinerated to generate electricity. And a small portion of that is plastic bags. So I say at this particular time, is it warranted? Certainly here in North Andover. And my feeling is, no, not right now, maybe sometime in the future. But not for those two reasons. It's not warranted.
Yeah, well, we understand that's your opinion. We have a different opinion. We do think it's warranted. And look at the number of towns around us that have done it. I mean, there's good reasons for it. We're not doing this out of the blue. We're getting in sync with other towns. And, if you go around, again, even just from a litter perspective, you go around town, you see these plastic bags in the woods, in the trees, and they're there forever, almost virtually forever, until somebody picks it up.
Have any of these towns that have implemented the plastic bag ban, have you guys studied the environmental impact of those plastic bag bans? Like Andover, for instance. I mean, we put a ban in place, we should want to see the results.
I don't know how
Right.
you could study the environmental impact. No, so we didn't do that.
Okay.
We can tell you that there were multiple articles that we've researched in towns outside of Massachusetts that have had these similar policies in place for a longer period of time. And trying to think of that one from California, 85% of the businesses have found that their costs have reduced within a year's period, and the favorability in that town was very, very high over the change. I'm thinking that one, but there was multiple articles that we saw around that. So it was encouraging. We felt good about that, as towns and cities have implemented this, they've really seen positive change, not only in the businesses, but in the town itself.
Yeah, because it's, the other thing is I think it just raises visibility and awareness with people about the use of plastic, and it just kind of brings that a little bit to the forefront. Hopefully they start looking, people as individuals look to other ways that they can reduce plastic in their lives.
Could an alternative be having some type of a campaign within the town of creating more locations that have plastic bag recycling drop-off boxes? Like I know like Stop and Shop has one. Because you're then, sorry, I don't mean, because then at that point you are raising more awareness to the impact of plastic bags.
Yeah, I mean, there's a figure that about 5% of plastic in general gets recycled, and that's a pretty, you see that statistic a lot. So getting people to drive somewhere special to drop off their plastic bags. I mean, they don't do it at Market Basket now. We actually went to Market Basket and we stood there for an hour and counted the number of people taking plastic bags and the number that brought them back for recycling. And it was something like 279 took plastic bags and 7 brought them back for recycling. So if it's not convenient, if it's not on your curbside, people just aren't going to do it, unfortunately.
I mean, maybe if we had more of a campaign and I think most people in North Andover don't know that they can bring their plastic bags to Market Basket or Stop and Shop or something to recycle them.
Well, some people don't even know it's not supposed to go in the trash. I was talking with one friend who said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not supposed to go on the curbside." And one friend of mine said, "Oh, I always put it in curbside. I didn't know you weren't allowed to do that." So, that's another issue, is that the plastic probably is getting into the curbside recycling and causing some problems, the bags.
This recycling is really a misnomer to a great extent. It makes people feel warm and fuzzy, saying, we're going to recycle this, we're going to recycle that.
Right.
But often, it just doesn't happen. For example, during the last 3 years, recycling market in our country has taken a nosedive during the pandemic. And often you have so many recyclables that you have no place to put them. So where do they end up? In landfills. You'll see sections of landfills full of plastic, full of glass, all around the country. So again, it's really a misnomer. It doesn't happen to the extent that most people believe.
Well, all the more reason why we want to eliminate the use of plastic to begin with. So thank you for that.
Yeah. No, we agree with you 100% in the reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is the least effective. It's really reducing and reusing. And by reusing, if you have your reusable bags, you're not even getting into the recycling issues to that extent. You're getting away from that and changing behavior so that instead of a one-time use of something that you're tossing, that's going to, break down and either become part of the burning process. And I don't think most people want those smokestacks right next to them. Or, there'll be trash in our landscape. We really hope that this is a really positive way to affect change in ways that will benefit all of us in our town.
Do you have recommendations for next steps?
Discussion? Anybody in the public that wants to comment? And you guys can debate. Anything else you want to debate on this?
Okay. Any other discussion for today? Any additional follow-up that the board would like to request?
Jim, do you have any questions?
Is there a specific vote tonight, a national vote tonight?
It's a town, it's going in front of the town annual meeting, correct?
Correct.
So I wasn't prepared to speak on this tonight. It actually was a surprise to me that this was an agenda item as well. I'm here for another matter a little bit later on the agenda. I can say that...
Can you just introduce yourself?
Sorry.
That's okay.
My name is Jim Zanakis. I live on Salem Street, North Andover. I'm the owner of a few different businesses, soon to be 4 businesses here in North Andover. Mike's Market on Middlesex Street, Midtown Market and Taki's Pizza on Salem Street, and a new restaurant opening on Salem Street as well. So again, I wasn't prepared to speak on this, but I can tell you that the small business community in North Andover has never been, I've been in small business here for 24 years, I've never seen an environment like this. At any given time, you might see 0 or 1 restaurants for sale in North Andover. Today, there are 9, and there's a reason for that. Restrictions have been onerous, to say the least, over the last several years, and it's not any one restriction. They've been piling up little by little by little over time and stressing a lot of businesses to their maximum point. Retail businesses, small businesses, the changing economy with Amazon delivering things right to your door, Chewy delivering right to your door. So when you have a store like, I don't want to mention any specific names because I have a lot of friends in the small business community and I don't want to preempt some of their concerns, but with due respect to the people who are presenting this in their opening comments, I actually texted a couple of my friends who were mentioned as being supportive, and they are not supportive. In no uncertain terms did they just convey to me that they did not endorse this. I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself in saying that this is just one more piece of the puzzle that makes it a little bit more difficult to do business in Massachusetts and specifically in North Andover. As for I have no doubt that the intentions are true and the intentions are pure and hoping to help the overall picture of our globally environment. But if you look at with the lady who presented, we stood in my line at my counter at Midtown Market on Salem Street, and we kind of lamented how someone comes up with a pack of chicken or a 2-liter of soda or just about any other product that's in the store. It's packaged in plastic. The bag is a microscopic fraction of the plastic that's being consumed by the customer. So it seems kind of counterintuitive. And of course, I offered, and on this I will speak for any business in North Andover, that I think people would be willing, to your point, sir, about putting drop-off locations for recyclables. I guarantee Market Basket would prefer that to having a paper bag mandate. The cost is significant. It's not a matter of double. We're talking a matter of 3, 4, 5x depending on the bag, specifically if the bags are weighted. At Midtown Market, we sell a lot of glass, be it beer or bottles of alcohol, wine, and if it has to be a handle bag for the convenience of our customers, we're talking about multiple times greater. We strive to be good corporate citizens, good corporate neighbors. We donate to every possible group that we can. I've taken a lot of pride in that. My family's been in business in this town for about 45 years. And, you know, quite frankly, this one kind of pushed me a little bit to the max here of what I can tolerate from my community. I wanted to speak out. And it takes a lot for a small business owner to speak out. I've sat where you're sitting. I was on the Board of Selectmen for 9 years. I know how difficult it is to have to discuss these matters. I think a lot of my peers in my industry are concerned about voicing their concerns because, quite frankly, none of us want to have any kind of controversy surrounding us or therefore our businesses by extension. But I'm not here just for myself. I'm here for the other folks that arbitrarily, they might be at 3,100 square feet or 3,001 square feet. And that number, quite frankly, it doesn't impact Mike's Market. It doesn't impact Taki's Pizza. It won't impact my new restaurant, but it does impact Midtown Market. So the same customer can come to one counter or another 50 feet away, but because it's two different corporations that own it, they can buy the same product, but one has a restriction about a paper bag, one doesn't. So again, with the best of intentions, there's a whole other debate. Sir, to your point about the environmental impacts, you're looking at the weight to transport paper bags is so much greater than plastic bags. That has a massive environmental impact on the trucks that deliver it to me, the trucks that deliver it to the warehouse where I'm buying it from, et cetera. If you look at the chemicals that go into, first of all, creating a paper bag and recycling a paper bag, the chemicals that we're talking about incinerating as well. Those chemicals, I'm not sure to your point, sir, about if those are captured in the scrubbers or not, but it's not a win-win without any negative impact on the other side. So I'd encourage the board to continue to vet this rule and hopefully come up with the right decision. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess to kind of just sparking a little bit from what you were saying, we seem to be kind of going from one end of the spectrum to the other, where it's okay for plastic bags now completely banning it, as opposed to maybe engaging the businesses of North Andover together of saying, what can we do together as a community to increase awareness and create more recycling availabilities, things like that, as opposed to just a complete shift to banning. Because I can almost guarantee that most small businesses, it's common sense, I would think, that they're going to just push that right to the customer as far as the cost, especially with this economy the way it is too. Granted, we're pretty lucky in North Andover, but that's still an impact. And I actually honestly didn't even think of the impact of the more weight of transporting paper bags, and then the secondary impact of those kind of things too. So, okay, that's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Hi, Lynn Langton, 10 Surrey Drive. I am part of the committee that's been bringing forth this warrant article. You're our health board. And just taking a step back here for a second, just thinking about it, plastics are not healthy. That is why 67% of Massachusetts are eliminating the plastic bags, right? And that's 154 towns. Plastic is not good for our health. It is not good for the environment. It is not good for climate change. Plastic bags are made out of fossil fuels, and that contributes to climate change. Plastic bags contribute to litter. You're a health board. We're asking you to get behind this. We in North Andover love our businesses too, and we are not trying to tell everybody, we don't want them to have to pay 2, 3, 4 times more for paper bags. We want to go to renewables. I think the campaign should be more bring your own bag. Bring your own bag, love your business. If we put extra recycling buckets all around town, they don't use the ones that we have. We can't, even the curbside recycling, right? So what we're trying to do here is eliminate the use of plastic bags, and move towards reusable so that we're not spending money on paper bags. So we're trying to promote reusables. That is the bottom line. So, thank you.
Can I just add, you were talking about the cost of paper bags. There is a greater cost, but plastic bags are not free. There's a cost for plastic bags as well. So I think we have in our head, there's a cost of brown bags, but, you know, we're giving out these and they're free to the customer. The customer is paying the cost. That cost is included in the business's, you know, overall cost to their operations. So.
I do think one of the things I do agree with you is that, you know, going to like CVS, for example, or actually think of like Amazon, when, you know, you get a package that's in a box about this big and the package is a pen. You know, same thing with what you were saying with CVS of putting a bottle of soda in a plastic bag to go. Again, I think shifting and educating businesses that those are the things that we should more focus on reducing, and as opposed to just a paradigm shift of banning, where if we had, and again, I think that if we put kind of what you were saying is, people are probably not using these boxes because they just don't know that they're there. But if there was a bigger campaign in the town, that more people in the town would know, oh, well, we go to Takis to go pick up our pizza, then we can just drop off our plastic bags. Again, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm trying to just figure out some type of middle ground.
Yeah, and I think we all agree a campaign would be great. And we can encourage good behavior with a campaign, and let's do that. But like Lynn said, let's do that to encourage people to use their reusable bags instead of the paper bags. I don't think it's going to work to get people completely off of plastic bags. And we want people completely off plastic bags for a number of reasons. And a campaign is not going to do that. So, let me tell you, we went to Market Basket. Our church, we bought, I don't know, something like 200, 300 reusable bags and handed them out for free at Market Basket. We funded that. And, you know, it's just frustrating because I go to Market Basket and I still see carriages full of plastic bags. And now, granted, we didn't give one to every shopper at Market Basket. It's impossible. But we gave out a lot of reusable bags. And I still see carriagefuls of plastic bags. Carriagefuls, okay? Some people are not going to change unless they're forced to change. Some people will be very influenced by a campaign. I agree. Let's do a campaign. After this hopefully passes, let's do a campaign to push the reusables over the paper.
Have you been working with the Merchants Association at all on this?
I did reach out to the Merchants Association. I emailed with Kate Rossi. She works for the Merchants Association. She asked for a bunch of information. They had a lot of questions. I sent that all along and haven't heard anything back. We asked to present to them, and they did not take us up on that.
Any other questions, discussion from anybody? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I think, Annette, did you want to speak? Or did you want to-
Okay, we're going to move on to the agenda to our public hearing. We actually have two public hearings this evening. Our first public hearing is related to a tobacco permit request. So I just need a motion to, thank you. So open the public hearing for tobacco permit request for Main Street Liquor, 64 Main Street. Did you want to present something first?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Start the process?
Yeah, Brian's just going to set the stage for the public hearing.
All right, so we have a regulation that we passed a few years ago that set a cap on our tobacco permits. And we have our tobacco control agent here to help us work through the changes in the regulations, and the board can discuss to see what the interpretation is and where we want to go. What we have right now on our books is a regulation that states at any given time there should be no more than 16 tobacco product sales permits issued in the town of North Andover. So that's 16 total. The next bullet in the regulation says at any given time there shall be no more than one tobacco product sales permit issued to an adult-only retail tobacco establishment. Now, I want the board to think about that for a second and decide if we have, and Ron can probably step up and help us with this, the interpretation of, is it 16 total with one dedicated as a adult-only tobacco retailer, which at the time the regulations were passed gave them additional liberties as to what they could sell, such as e-cigarettes, flavored products like menthol cigarettes, which are now banned from the state. So currently we've got 15 tobacco permits out there. The last one we had was for an adult-only retailer that was off of Water Street. They had since let that permit lapse, and they haven't been back in a couple of years now. So we've got that 16th there. Do we have to have that dedicated as a adult-only tobacco retailer, which has a list of criteria? You can't sell lottery, you can't sell alcohol, you can't sell food. It has to be tobacco only. Gentlemen coming in are going to be reopening Main Street Liquors under new owners, renovated. They're looking for a tobacco license, a tobacco sales permit. We've got 15 existing and one extra that was set aside for the adult only. So do you have any idea as to what the legalities of this is? And
I wish I could tell you my memory was clear from the hearing.
Okay.
But as I read the regulation, generally there are a variety of iterations of.
Speak up.
Oh,
yeah, go to the podium, Ron.
oh no. That's,
Thanks, guys.
There's a variety of as you know, the NASA's Ron Beauregard Tobacco Control Program. There's a variety of choices that you had, or the board had, at the time when you adopted these regulations. Some of the permits language or permit cap language involved extinguishing the number going down through an attrition process if a place went out of business. But that language isn't in here, and I've read it a few times. And generally speaking, and I don't know any variation from this interpretation, you have an instrument which is repeated in both 4.14 and 4.15. The instrument is the tobacco product, oh, I'm sorry, on page 9, is a tobacco product sales permit. That, and it's of course reiterated in when they're discussing the only one adult-only tobacco store, a vape shop, a smoke shop. But it's the same instrument, it's just it's a different operation. So your definition of an adult-only retail tobacco establishment addresses the way the permit holder would operate his business. And as I understand it, the regulations only allow one establishment, as it's stated here, to operate as an adult-only tobacco sales permit. So there have been in the past, I've worked with communities, have caps on the number of permit holders that will operate a tobacco, an adult-only tobacco store, which you do have. This is one. But if there's no reason I can read in these regulations, unless there was some purpose that was varied, and I don't have those notes from those that hearing that you had, but I don't recall there being an interpretation that meant there was one reserved for, set aside.
Okay.
It just would mean that if this was taken by, is it Main Street Liquors? Main Street Liquors, yeah, that there would not be another permit available to operate any establishment, adult or non-adult.
Okay, so we don't need to give variance.
No, I don't see any, and I checked my number, I have the same number that Tony gave me, 15.
Okay, all right,
so
good. We weren't
should be
sure,
it.
I thought we were
Should
at
be
the
the
cap of 15 plus 1.
Plus the one, but as I read that, it's the same instrument of being a permit. It's just
Okay.
that it's issued to an adult only. The language can get kind of confusing because I'm sure on your permitting paperwork, you ask, or there's something indicated, what are you going to sell? And of course, the only thing now that the adult-only retail tobacco stores can sell that convenience stores and the like cannot they used to be the bastion of flavored tobacco, of course, with the way our regulations were originally and the way the state guided us originally. Then came the state law, and that just took that all away for everybody except a smoking bar where they would be consumed on the premises. The only thing they can sell differently is what I kind of call high-test nicotine vapes, over 35 milligrams per milliliter. But
Okay.
I don't see any other, I think it's a fair interpretation.
Okay, then, I think you guys, if you have any questions or want to debate it at all, but I think they're all set to take the last tobacco permit we have, and then we will have none left and nothing reserved for an adult-only tobacco retailer.
I don't want to rain on your parade. I did take a couple of notes. I do notice that this would be a new store, a new applicant,
Yep.
right? I mean, I know it's in the same location where the original, yeah. But I guess, yes, but legally speaking, I guess it would be considered a new applicant. And I don't know the answers to these questions because I don't
Okay.
have my zoning maps and such. But it appears that on page 9, you'll see there's a provision that says that a new store, a new applicant, can't be within 500 feet of an existing retailer that holds a tobacco product sales permit. And there's also says in that same page 9, another section, I should tell you the sections, could you see them? Yeah, sorry.
4.16, 4.17.
That's correct. Well, let's see. One is 4.17, which is, yeah, page 9. And then there's the one, I think it's earlier. I might not have brought it up with me. You see the one earlier, the page prior to, I think it's 8. Mentions about being within 500 feet. Just before it passes, yeah. Sorry, 4.17 on page 8. It says no tobacco product sales permit holder. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. Hold on. Just take a look at these.
Is there another? Is there
I'm
another
sorry, they're
retailer?
right together. 4.16 and 4.17.
Yeah. Is there another retailer there?
No, I don't, that's why I said I don't have it. I didn't mean to rain on your parade.
I'm thinking, like,
I didn't mean to get.
who are they going to be next?
I just wanted to
looking at all the
properly
addresses,
advise
and I'm
you.
like, what am
I
I
didn't
Okay.
know whether there was another permit. No, I didn't have a surprise knowledge of this information. I just didn't know whether they're within
Mike's
500 feet.
I think Mike's Market's the closest one.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
down Waverly.
I don't think that
And
would
there's
be-
not there's not a school within 500 feet?
I think the closest would be St. Mike's.
Okay.
What about, Richdale Lawns?
That's more than 500 feet away.
I think
That's
that's
right.
more than
Richdale's the next
500
closest one.
feet.
Yeah.
Because that would be
Put it in my
closer
GPS.
than Mike's.
Okay.
That, you're right, I think that
That's
would be
closer than
technically.
Mike's. Jim?
Yeah.
I'm a bad estimate.
Yep. Okay.
That's all I had. I didn't mean to
Okay.
startle anyone. I just, I
No, I'm
looked
thinking
at
like,
what
who sells over
language
there?
you had.
Richdale's way down the end of Main Street. Does
Okay. All right.
St. Mike's is the closest
Yeah.
school, and Brad Street is now apartments.
right, right. Did you want to present anything as part of the public hearing?
No, we just wanted to introduce ourselves, like we are the new owners and I'm the current manager of Main Street Liquors. This is my first business and I'm opening a completely new renovated store over at 64 Main Street. So I would like to request the board to grant me the tobacco permit so that like it's a new business, so we want to have customers who can shop, like it will be a one-stop shop for them. So I just would like to request the board to grant the tobacco permit to us. Thank you.
Back to the microphone.
I would make a request, and I don't think there'd be an objection. We prepared in the past a statement, a retailer statement, that is a one-pager. It acknowledges kind of a point-by-point all of the rules based on the state law predominantly and some of the local rules. I mean, your regs already, sometimes these things get buried and, the language is not fun to read for anybody, but especially for retailers and such. So your regulations already provide a obligation to have anyone that's going to sell tobacco to read all local, state, and federal laws. we have a statement that could be provided. I recommend it be done for new applicants, perhaps even for renewals. I mean, to make policy or for proposed policy here, but it would be a one-pager. Yes, I have to ID everybody. Yes, I can't sell flavored. Yes, I understand what an electronic nicotine delivery device. It's just a boom, boom, boom. And if you had any questions, to feel free.
We have ID scanner since it's a liquor store, so definitely.
So that would be, if it's a recommendation, I guess, more than anything else, that it be an obligation.
Approve their permit application, and now we are out of tobacco permits in town. So anybody else coming in has to wait for somebody to close.
Okay.
We need a motion on
Well, first we have
It
to
was
see if
just
there's
for
more
discussion.
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, we were just doing discussion. That was
Okay.
just for, if we needed a variance, I wanted to discuss that and then them have you together to vote to issue a variance or not. But with Ron's clarification, we have our 16 total permits. One does not need to be reserved for adult only, and they can have the 16th and last and final tobacco permit.
Okay.
So
Has
you guys are
anybody
all-
else signed up to speak on this permit?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Okay, you guys are good to go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just a motion to close the public hearing.
We have the other.
We're going to close and then start again.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So motion to close this public hearing.
Yep.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
There you
Do
go.
we want to do a vote on this tonight?
We don't have to vote.
Do we
No,
have
you
to
have to vote.
vote? We don't
Nope.
have to vote? Okay.
Nope.
Congratulations.
And now the last thing on our agenda.
Okay, so now we have another public hearing we are going to open. This public hearing is a tobacco violation appeal from Midtown Market. Just need a motion to open our second public hearing of the evening. Thank you very much. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
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 So, I don't know if Ron, you want to go through the quick scenario? It's 2-second summary.
Back up to the microphone, please.
Thanks, Ron.
I just, this is an appeal, so,
Yeah.
usually, or it can be done either way, I suppose, for those appealing to provide a statement. But, I mean, generally, we did a compliance checks, as we always do. In this case, we did some on March 7th. It was a Tuesday morning, actually, about 10:25 a.m. And unfortunately, there was a sale. A mistake was made. And about 10 minutes after that, I issued the required cease and desist order, correction order. And of course, the state 105 CMR 665 requires that the minimum fine be $1,000. This is many-fold of what has been the norm for most local communities, but this is the one that the boards of health are obliged to order. And that was pretty much it. I know there's been an appeal,
Mhm.
and I think Jim should have an opportunity to,
Yeah, to address the board.
Thank
So-
you.
Okay.
Hello again. So Jim Zanakis for Midtown Market on Salem Street. So I'm joined tonight by my friend and colleague, Chris Arlina, who's here, and she's got a lot of experience. She's probably sold a lot of folks in town, various groceries and, yes, cigarettes over the years. I trust her tremendously with my family business. She's one of the better clerks that we have, one of the best that we've ever had, perhaps. And I think the day in question, she made a mistake. There was the young lady who came in to purchase was wearing a face mask. I think it might have thrown off Chris's judgment. And I think that what is relevant, I'm not sure if it factors into the relevance for the Board of Health, but for 24 years, my store on Salem Street has never had an alcohol violation. Mike's Market in 7 years has never had an alcohol violation. We haven't had a tobacco violation in about 20 years. So my biggest concern is to make sure that, to hold businesses accountable, of course, but there's a point where it becomes punitive to the clerk. I can tell you that this is a substantial cost for the clerk and or the business to bear. As I mentioned previously, again, I wasn't planning on speaking earlier, But as I mentioned, we try to be good corporate citizens. We try to do the right thing by our community. My partner and I live and work in the community. We have children, collectively 5 kids in this community. And we really just want to do the right thing for the town, and I hope that the town considers doing right by the small businesses who, again, have been through a lot the last few years, as evidenced by the fact that I'm on the first name basis with both, Brian and Steve. So for better or for worse, we've had a lot of communication with them in trying to do our part for the last few years. And again, just want to be supportive of our clerk here, again, who has been a tremendous part of an asset to our business, an asset to our community. And hopefully the board would consider that as maybe a mitigating circumstance to the violation.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Just one note that I will say, I think the fine used to be $100 until the state redid their state regulations, and now it's $1,000. So it's been quite a jump. Obviously, selling to minors is something we don't want to see ever happen. Mm-hmm. And I think the state, that's one of the reasons why they push the fine up so high, to be a really strong deterrent to keep it from happening. So it's up to the board as to what you guys want to do for the fine. It's your decision as a Board of Health to determine whether you want to modify the fine from the original $1,000 to something else. But that's for you guys to debate back and forth.
You said this minor was wearing a face mask?
Like a surgical mask.
Yeah,
He said face mask.
a face mask,
That's
as in
what he said.
a
Like a surgical
protective
mask.
Right.
COVID
Mhm.
mask. We don't dispute that there was an error in judgment. I think what we're hoping for is that the punishment can be more fitting of the infraction.
Thoughts?
Can we really legally change the fine, or is that a state fine?
Ron?
Ron, up to the microphone again, please.
Yeah, I did a bad job the first time.
I think
Yeah, I can address that. That's just line 105.
First and foremost, and I don't think Jim disputes this. First and foremost, we really focused on education. When I told Jim and I worked together I've been here since 2001. So it's been a long time. This new law has been very difficult on retailers, but I do, push the ID everyone, and I don't think Jim is arguing at all that it's the mask. It may have thrown off, but it wouldn't be an excuse for diverting from the requirement under 105 CMR 665 to ID everyone. And that is, and we did provide education to the store twice, even as early as 2 weeks before. But the answer to your question in regards to the citation itself and whether it can be modified, I am not going to provide you a legal opinion. I don't have the wherewithal to do that. My general thought is, it's kind of a little bit of a joke, but I think it's true, is that depends on what lawyer you ask. And that's why the business is so swift, so good. People read words in the regulations, and they can do what they want to do with them and read them the way they want to. But under the violation section, there is language that talks about hearings. Let me find it. Hearings. It's in the language says the procedure for a hearing, and At the hearing, the petitioner shall be given an opportunity to be heard and show why the order should be modified or withdrawn. And the procedure by the board after the hearing says, after the hearing, the Board of Health shall sustain, modify, or withdraw the order, and shall inform the petitioner, the appellant, in writing of the decision. If the board sustains or modifies the order, it shall be carried out within the time period allotted. So, I read those words. I will tell you that the instructions that the boards of health programs throughout the state have received is that the only issue for appeal is whether or not a sale occurred and that modification of the fine amount. I know one thing, and I think Jim appreciates it, that maybe appreciate might not be quite the right word, but understands it from my perspective, that I don't have any, I certainly don't have that authority to waiver from the fine. I just am obligated under the statute, under the set of regulations to do so. But I left you with those words, and so I'll leave it for all of you as almost, you're even seated like a Supreme Court, so I'll let you be the lawyers on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
A question, Jim. This is the first time that Midtown Market has potentially been fined?
For the first time as Midtown Market, previously we were a J&M convenience store. Our last infraction was a couple decades ago. We've never had an alcohol infraction at Midtown Market or J&M, and Mike's Market has never had an infraction either. We've also had compliance checks with the Mass State Lottery. So we've seen 2 incidents. This is one, and then another one that happened probably pretty close to when Ron had begun his time as a compliance, in the compliance capacity.
And that was many years ago, you say?
20 plus. But again, we take a lot of pride in, and the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that our business in particular is a bit unique on Salem Street. We don't have a lot of first-time customers. I'd say at least 90%, and I can source this through my credit card data to see, for folks that are paying with a credit card, way more than 90% of my customers are repeat customers, people that we know on a first-name basis. And when they come in, it just becomes habit to know exactly who they are. Whereas I know some businesses in North Andover, perhaps that are closer to the main highways, they might see a customer for the first time. Every other customer might be someone that comes in for the first time, and that's their only time coming in. Again, I know it's not an excuse, but it hopefully factors somewhat into the board's decision-making process.
So it appears that we have 3 things that we can do. We can go through with the total fine. We can eliminate. I mean, my read is that after hearing what you had to say, Ron, that the Board of Health do have a lot of flexibility here on each case as to what they can do. I hope I'm not misreading you.
He doesn't want to interpret. I don't think he wants to interpret.
Well, that's how I read what you had to say.
He does not want to interpret.
I think it was sustain,
Withdraw or modify.
modify or withdraw.
Correct.
Okay.
And Jim can answer if he disagrees, but I don't think there's been a question of fact of a sale, and so I think the idea of it being withdrawn, I guess I object to that because I feel like we did everything right to obtain. But to sustain or modify, that's of course up to you. I don't.
I'd like to talk about modifying for just a moment. Main Street Market has been here for decades. They have a good record.
Wrong one. Wrong one.
Midtown, excuse me, Midtown, I'm sorry, Midtown. Wearing well, you said face mask, but it's actually a surgical mask. I can see how there can be a measure of confusion as far as the age of the person that attempted to purchase tobacco. I'm certainly wide open to reducing the fine from $1,000 to a much lower amount. And If there's any interest in that, perhaps we should further discuss or go forward with the fine of $1,000.
So my big concern is the precedent of something like that. I mean, as painful as this is, to a small business, we've had these circumstances before, and unfortunately, I know she's great, but a violation is a violation, and whether it's Market Basket or a small business, I'm just concerned about a precedent for that.
If I may comment on that point, sir, a lot of the businesses, almost every business that I know of in North Andover has a policy that the clerk is responsible for the fine. That's something that's a policy across the board for most. We're hopeful that tonight we'll be able to figure out a way to not have to burden our employee with that cost.
Okay.
It's obviously a substantial amount of multiple weeks of pay.
Okay. Is that a common thing, Ron?
Jim's gonna have to call me on it if I'm wrong. Now, I remember we had a adoption of regulations. It was in I want to say a DPW building or something like that, because I know a lot of I can't remember where it was. It was quite a while ago. And there were several retailers from North Andover that were concerned that the employee themselves was not responsible. I don't think this rewrite, your most current local regulations, includes that provision. But if it does have the same...
The company itself.
It's theirs, not us.
Correct.
I'm sorry?
It would be the business itself that has that policy.
Yeah, I mean, 105 CMR 665, the state law, it's the applicant, the permit holder. But your local regs, would that, if there was some provision in there that would say that the employee was responsible, then, but there was at one point. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yes, there was. In this, so I don't want, Jim's not coming out of left field on this one, because I remember the hearing. There was, there were some owners that were frustrated that despite training and such, that the employee didn't feel the impact. But I was leery about it a little bit because we're not, when we go into a store, just like any other health agent, we're not there to hold someone or ask for a license. We're not police officers, and we don't want that to come into play. And so I made that statement many years ago. So with the board, and I could find it, I don't think it's in the ones that apply now, but the previous ones, and I'll double check that because I don't want to say that isn't true. If they kept it, they may have. But the language was something to the effect of, if once notified, once the owner is notified, if the owner wishes the clerk or their staff, the person that sold, to be fined as well, they must provide us with the name and address so that we can issue the ticket to the individual. I must say that in North Andover has not had many sales over the years, but in those few occasions where a sale did occur, no owner exercised that clause. And it was a lower fee too. I mean, at that time, I think it was $100 for the establishment. I think it was either $25 or $50 for the clerk. So you're getting me to think a little history. You're pretty sharp. I'm sharp. I can't remember the detail, but I wouldn't want to stand up here and tell you 100% that these rigs don't have that provision, but I don't believe they do. So I'll peek at them.
That was probably back in 2001 when you started. That was probably taken out.
So we could also modify the way it is paid or the time frame, correct? So we don't.
You can definitely extend the time frame. You can modify the amount. You can withdraw it, or you can keep it as is.
How many violations have we, so the...
This
that-
year, we've had 3.
This is our
Fourth? Yeah. Oh, yep, that's right. I forgot about the, yep.
And we
This is our 4th.
I do not believe we've
have not
modified.
modified any.
No, we've withheld them
Out
all
of
as is.
15. People, out of 15 tobacco
Oh, so our percentage is-
inspections or compliance checks, we've had
4 out of
4.
15.
This is our 4th. I think the pandemic set things back a little bit. Because previously, prior to 2020, we might get 1 every couple of years. And they were usually repeat offenders.
I think, if I may inquire or suggest that under the modification aspect of the violation, if it's within the board's purview to suspend a license as opposed to issue a fine.
Yes, Ron, please.
Ron, you could just sit at the table with the microphone.
There you go. Yeah, pull your stuff up.
Well, Jim, I almost wish you didn't bring that up, though. I'll tell you why. Okay. Should have brought my glasses. I remember being here once with Dr. Trowbridge, and I had to tell him it was like on the left-hand side of page something because I couldn't see. Okay, so you don't have 105 CMR with you, right? I'm sorry.
No, we just have our local
We just
regs.
have local.
Okay, well, I'll read it in and then I'll give it to you. So when it goes through the violations, it lists the 100, 2,000, and 5,000 for a first, a second, and the third offense. When we did all of our education at the beginning, this was a really big thing for me because, overall we have a 95% compliance rate throughout the collaborative, and it's not to make a big deal out of it, but we've spent a lot of time doing inspections and doing education. And I think my desire to do it was because of this large fine. So that's the violation section. That's called section, just for the record, 665.045. That's where most people would look to see what's the consequence, right? Violation section. Well, I can't give you the definites, but this went into effect in June of 2020, and months after, I want to say 6, 7, 8, 9 months afterwards, someone said, hey, for a first offense, it's not just, if you could use the word just, $1,000, but it's $1,000 plus a suspension. Now, this caught all of us off guard because all of the language says for the first offense, a $1,000 fine. And then the other one said it would be $2,000 for a second offense and up to 7 days. And the third would be up to 30 days. Now, this is where your regulations come in, and if I recall correctly, I don't have them in front of me, but theirs gives a range of 1 to 7 for a second offense, and 7 to 30, we'll say, for a third offense. Your regs, I think, say shall be a suspension for 7 days for a second offense and shall be 30 days for a third offense. So where's this all going? Well, someone came up, attorney, came up said, hey, look at this section before it. It's section 665.040, requirements for retail establishments. It's kind of an innocuous section before the violation section. Talks about requirements to, not have a mobile location, can't be a truck or something like that, and it's going to be conditioned on allowing inspections, which everyone does. And then the last one here says, if they haven't paid their fines and such, that the permit would be removed. The last one says, I'll read it in, and I'm not asking, and I haven't asked for this, and there's some troubles with this, I think. It says, the section D says, sale of a tobacco product by a retail establishment to a person younger than 21 years old shall result in the retail establishment being prohibited from selling tobacco products for up to 30 consecutive business days or a longer term as enacted. Okay, blah, 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 blah. That's it. I mean, there's a little more, a little more language there. But so someone said, well, wait a minute. What that means is if it says they shall result for up to 30 days, then they said, well, that's, again, this is all a matter of interpretation. That means at least 1 day suspension in addition to a $1,000 fine. I've never sought that. All the retailers that I educated so, thoroughly with, I went with what we were taught originally. So I thought, and $1,000 was, as Jim is explaining, is a huge hit on a retailer. So I didn't go there. We discussed this a little in our advisory board meeting about a year ago. And again, it just calls under that. And now there's been some, I think, a pushback somewhere else. And the pushback is, choose one or the other. A suspension. It says here specifically for sale to under 21, it's a suspension of at least, of up to 30 days. So I think an attorney has argued that, I know an attorney has argued, you got to pick one or the other because this one is specific to 21, the other one just says a violation of 665, the regulations. So I'm getting into a heck of a lot more, but Jim, you I don't know, I'm giving you all the truth, about, if it sounds like there's a little frustration or, not being 100% knowing, it's true. Because these are relatively new regulations, and you didn't write them, and the usual bodies that we have help us, like the Mass Municipal Association and Mass Association of Boards, didn't write them. So I'll leave it at that. I forget what you asked, Jim.
So modifying it.
Can we do a suspension, instead of a fine?
Yeah.
I think the biggest concern that I have is making sure that I can hold my staff accountable, now and in the future. And you mentioned, sir, about precedent, and how this plays out will establish a precedent for how we interact on our end and other businesses as well. God forbid if there is another violation, and there's no guarantee because I'm not the guy at the register every single time. I'm relying on human nature and human error, and to a certain extent judgment. But some businesses in North Andover that for $1,000, that's their entire week's of profit, for some of the smaller stores in town. And that's not just tobacco. I mean, for us, tobacco profit is very, very small. So that's why I'm suggesting perhaps a suspension or a modification of the dollar amount to make, again, the punishment be more fitting of the infraction, which is something perhaps that North Andover should consider longer term as well. I know, for example, there might be some corporate neighbors of ours that for them it's not worth the time or effort to come to a meeting, but my partner and I are proud corporate citizens of North Andover, and we want to have this conversation because it matters to us and it matters to our staff, and I wanted to show support for Chris, who has been a great part of our community for a long time. She's probably served you coffee, many of you coffee over the last 15 or so years. And again, we're just trying to do the right thing, and hopefully the town will do the same.
Okay. One thing I will mention, suspension is definitely an option I think should be on the table. I do know that certain stores in the past, when a suspension was brought up or discussed, would absolutely lose their mind. We had a repeat offender in here 20 years ago that required a 30-day suspension, and he was beside himself. He was going to lose thousands and thousands of dollars because of the suspension versus the $300 fine or whatever it was at the time. So that's for you guys to discuss, but I know that that's something the board has had to do before in the past, that depending on the business and the situation, could be more detrimental to a business than the fine. But in this case, if things have shifted and the location doesn't require or doesn't do a lot of tobacco sales, that could be one way to help mitigate the effect of a large fine. But that's for you guys to decide. That's something that we have done in the past that has impacted people a lot more than the fine, just to make sure you guys are aware of that. But if the owner of the establishment is proposing that, I think it's something you guys should discuss.
I think I'm not opposed to that. I mean, I would think maybe something like 30 days suspension.
Maybe I shouldn't have spoken about a suspension.
I'm just trying to put into context of the $1,000 fine is a big deal. I'm just trying to put it into context. I don't.
It's different, I'm sure, for every store. If I may, when I suggested it, I did reach back in my memory and in my brain from my time on the Board of Selectmen, where the first infraction for an alcohol violation was a warning, the second was a one-day suspension, and the third was escalated from there. So I know a lot's changed. I've been out of the political world for quite some time. Again,
No,
it's,
I don't have a basis to go off of that 30 days, so I'm kind of just looking for guidance from other people too about, I'm not opposed to this, I just, again, that number came out, I don't have a guidance of where to go from there.
If I may suggest to the board that a modification of the dollar amount on the fine, if that's appropriate, I would suggest that perhaps a more appropriate number would be about half, about $500, in the interest of acknowledging that there was wrongdoing, being supportive of our staff, and also for the town to show that there's goodwill, knowing that we're doing our best to be compliant, and it's awfully difficult, much more so than one might think, especially with a population that we're friends with a lot of our customers, and it's hard to continue to ask them for identification. So if the board is open to that, I would be...
Does everybody else think?
When the state revised the regulations and the fine for first offense was raised to $1,000, I said, wow, this is really overreach on the part of the state, because it was a mistake that was made. And the fine is huge. And I was thinking of 30-day suspension, as you just commented on, in lieu of the fine. It's tough.
Yeah.
But $1,000 is perhaps even tougher.
I think the suspension is worse than a fine in that situation, significantly, even for the smallest of
Yeah,
stores.
but that's
in
the
North
board's
Andover.
decision.
Understood.
We hear you on that.
I think my issue is that we just recently had this happen, and it was a long-time employee. It was someone who hadn't made mistakes before, but as a board, we requested the precedence to stress the importance of it. So that's where I stand.
I was okay with a modification of suspension in lieu of fine, but I think either have to be equally important and kind of set that message.
And it's just a fine. We are establishing a precedent to a great extent.
But we already have. I think that's what we're saying. We've done 3 already at that
Exactly.
level.
So would be establishing a precedent. Well, it could be less than $1,000.
Have the previous...
So the next person that comes in front of the board, he or she may say, hey, wait a second, this person, it's been reduced to $500 or so.
If I may ask, have the previous infractions also appealed, or were they just paid as well?
So one of the last infractions, they came and not so much appealed, but they basically said, we acknowledge that we did wrongdoing, we accept, they came and just presented their guilt, I guess, saying that we had that infraction, we understand, we will pay the fine, but we want you to know that our business is making these changes moving forward to not have this happen again.
They said if we wanted to reduce it, we could.
Well, yes, that is true. Yes, of course, of course.
I think perhaps the issue beyond tonight, regardless of what the board decides tonight, that there's clearly, I mean, there are far greater crimes that are committed without the consequence of a $1,000 fine, quite frankly, and, you know, criminal acts that are committed without the same repercussions. I'm sure the law was well-intentioned, but clearly it's being punitive in all the wrong ways. So perhaps whatever happens tonight, the board would consider modifying all future, you know, escalating up to $1,000, because again, it's being 100% compliant. I think Ron knows better than anybody that 100% compliance is virtually impossible when you have the human element in play. No matter how well I train my staff, I might have a new person working that just, it slips their mind, and it becomes problematic. Trust me when I tell you, no business owner wants to be in this situation. No business owner wants to be before the board, and certainly no business owner wants to sell. We want to play up by all the rules and have a happy, peaceful existence here in our town.
I don't believe we can be, with the state setting those fines, I do not believe that the town can be more, create its own regulations to be more lenient of those fines. Is that correct? We would have to go higher.
On a case-by-case basis to modify each individual infraction, should there be
Correct.
one.
Yes, the board can do that on appeal, but we can't create a policy.
Okay,
The
got
initial
it.
fine has to be $1,000 per the state regulation. The board then has the ability to sustain, modify, or withdraw upon appeal in a public hearing. So I think if you guys do debate on a modification, I would have a combination of monetary, suspension, as well as required additional training through Ron's office. Sorry to put more work on you, Ron, but that's what's going around these days.
That's always,
I think whatever the outcome is tonight, I think that it would help us for the future to know, like, all the other towns in your jurisdiction, we don't have to talk about it now, but like, what are other Board of Healths doing? Again, I'm just, because we're throwing out all these numbers, and like, it's just a matter of like an opinion when you throw these numbers out. You know, we're all citizens of North Andover, and we want to make sure our small businesses are good, but we're also the Board of Health, and there are certain regulations that we have to uphold as well. So this is what I'm, struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll make a motion. $500 fine, 7-day suspension.
Do we need to close the public hearing?
So we have to close the public hearing first.
But we can
So
discuss. You
sorry,
can bring
hold
a
I will
recommendation.
withdraw my motion.
Just make a
I would be a
recommendation.
little bit more, that would be my recommendation, but I just want some input from the other board members of this, kind of taking off of what Brian said. Joe, in your experience, and including training additional providers. But Joe, I guess in your experience of being on the board, the health is the most senior member of the board. I'm just worried about the precedent that this is setting for the future.
Well, we do have wiggle room, and again, $1,000, that's overreach. This was a mistake that was made, and they're gonna be slapped around, period, because of that mistake. It's just what that will be. Now, looking at the old regulations, going back to 2019, the old town regulations that we did update, it's in page 13 here. So these are no longer applicable. But it talks about 17(1)C, second violation, $300, and license suspension for up to 30 days. This is no longer germane. It's been tightened up since that time. But the first violation is for $300 and license suspended for 7 days. We certainly wouldn't have a problem with $300 or $500, license suspended for 7 days, and additional training provided by Ron and/or people that work for Ron.
can I offer an opinion on that, perhaps?
Sure.
I wish I could go back and unwind the suspension conversation because it's gone very differently. It's gone a little differently. I think Ron knew it was going to go this way, and I wish if I could unwind that. Because a 7-day suspension has a much longer lasting impact on our business. It's not just necessarily the 7 days. We're talking about a more meaningful, longer lasting impact. So perhaps I spoke too soon in not understanding that the duration would be as long as 7 days. I was more under the impression of previous suspensions of a day or two. So if the inclination of the board, I have no problem with training. In fact, I welcome it regardless of the outcome tonight. I welcome more training for my staff. I think that they would benefit from it. But at this point, again, if I could unwind here for a second, the fine, even though I still believe it's punitive, would be less impactful in our business than half the fine plus a suspension. And again, we're trying to find a way to own up to our mistake and not have it be so punitive. So
I think trying to reach a happy medium, we still have to follow the regulations. And I know that, we do have a regulation. I know $1,000 is difficult. Having 30 days, you're saying would be, more.
impossible.
Yeah.
Having more than a day would be impossible.
I mean, my recommendation would be a fee of $500 a fine with 14 days suspension.
I'd rather take the $1,000 fine then. That would have a significant lasting impression, a lot negative impact on the business. Again, regardless, I hope the one positive thing that comes from this is I hope that there's maybe a greater light shining upon the fact that this structure of penalties is broken. And I feel bad, for Ron to have to enforce them because I think deep down he knows that it's punitive to the extent of, you can't have 100% compliance. Again, to your point, I'd rather take the $1,000 fine. We're just trying to find the least impactful aspect to the business and to our staff as well. Because what happens tonight internally impacts what will happen if and when there's a infraction in the future.
When an underage sale happens, is that business automatically a cease and desist to sell any future tobacco products until okay.
No. The only, it's a totally different instrument for us because the old citation was under Chapter 40, Section 21D. What you get, if you park somewhere and it's the time is expired. It's totally a non-criminal. This one here is sort of it's not under that statute because that statute only allows up to a $300 fine. This one here, the only reason the word, it's kind of a combination, the lawyers explained to us that it's correction order / cease and desist. The cease and desist is just not to sell to anyone under the age of 21, which we know is not an intention to do that. It's just a formality, I think, in the way that is designed.
So the lean of the board, if I'm reading the board correctly, is either adhere to the state reg, $1,000, or a lesser fine with suspension. If there's a suspension, I don't see any way that'll be less than 7 days. And if it's 7 days or more, he said, we'll take the full fine. Perhaps that's the smartest way to go, other than establishing a precedent here. Given the $1,000 fine, no suspension.
I also go back to the option to modify that if, $1,000 within 21 days, if I don't mean to make it a payment plan, but that it doesn't have to be a one-time, if we could extend the period for payment to make it not, to your point, that is a big check to write at one time. So I also see, or would ask the board to think about, is there a way to think about executing on that makes it not, to modify it so it's not.
Only because you mentioned it, that issue of a payment plan, or whatever you want to call installment, it has been discussed by other boards.
Okay.
And frankly, as I'm sitting here, whether it would be, and this is not, it wouldn't matter whether it was 6 months or 6 weeks or what have you. There's no, now, town council, sometimes will give different opinions in regard to this, but we did get opinion from one town, from the town council, and it was regardless of the time, meaning the extent. So you just mentioned it, and it doesn't come up often.
Yeah, that's one way you could modify it, is extend the timeline.
For our purposes, tomorrow I want it resolved one way or another. I don't want to have to, think beyond. So it's not a matter of, a payment plan. I don't think that helps, my situation or another small business. I think that, someone mentioned about precedent. I think perhaps it might be a good thing to set a precedent that, that the town is understanding about the plight of small businesses, especially over the last several years, and that a more fitting first offense fine would be considerably lower than $1,000. I think I see a lot of people nodding when I mention that, and I hope you do realize that we're trying to do the right thing, and it's virtually impossible for us to have a 100% success rate. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world from a business standpoint if the board were setting a precedent of modifying a penalty to be more consistent with matching the infraction. So I suggested earlier, having the fine in half, which is still considerably more than a first offense under the previous regulations, and I think it would certainly be welcome by the business community to have that happen. And perhaps the mitigating factor is the mask as well.
If we were just to modify the cost, this matter is not that much different, if different at all, than the other 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 businesses that have been fined here. So how far do you go to work with them? I don't have that answer. To lower the fee without a suspension, and he's not open to suspension. Of course, that's our decision, but I don't see lowering the fee without a suspension. Therefore, the wisest thing may be to be consistent with precedent here, which is the full fee, $1,000 for the violation. It's really a lousy feeling. I don't like this at all. I take no solace in this whatsoever. Again, it's overreach on the part of the state.
It's the state.
It is.
Right.
It is. But
Yeah, we're executing on a state guideline, but we've already done it multiple times. That's what the hard part is.
Small businesses.
Yeah. that's the hard
Respectfully,
part.
I would suggest that a lot of my peers in this business don't feel comfortable speaking. Clearly, I do. I don't have any issues with public speaking, and I don't have any issues expressing my opinion. A lot of people that I talk to, be it communicating with. By the way, you have an excellent team, with best that I've seen in years. I've heard in the past, perhaps, that sometimes approaching the health department, approaching various town boards has been intimidating for a lot of people, and a lot of us might take that for granted. So perhaps they didn't think that they had the avenue to ask and maybe shine a light on the fact that there is, at least from my point of view, an injustice in the way that the licenses are being adjudicated. So regardless, I do hope that the board considers that, this is a meaningful impact on town businesses beyond tonight.
I just don't see treating this any different without a suspension than the other 3 or 4 violations are. This is not unique. They're all the same. A mistake was made.
Yeah, I would agree with Joe.
I don't want to make the motion.
I'll make a motion to close the.
I was going to say, well, any other further
Sorry,
discussion?
do you have anything?
Yeah, yeah.
Any other?
Any
anything
final
else?
comments, Ron? Anything? Any final comments? Okay, then now we can get a motion to close the public hearing.
motion.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought I made the motion already, sorry.
You made the motion to
Sorry.
start. Okay, yeah, true. Okay. Public hearing is officially closed, and now we can discuss, and if somebody has a motion, go for it.
Did you want to make the motion? Or I can make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to keep the fine as is of $1,000. But I will say that I do agree, and I agree with Joe, that the change in fine is an exorbitant amount, and I think that conversations in the future should definitely be had about how we handle these things. But I don't think I'm prepared to make that change right now, so I'll make a motion for keep the $1,000 in place.
Do you want to include the education?
I mean, I think education is probably I would think a standard part of any fine, or any violation, I should say.
It's always available, with or without an order, it's by order. Of the
Yeah,
school.
I mean, I think that, you know. So I'll just keep it at $1,000.
And a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Reluctantly, but aye. Small
I
business.
was-
Jen, thank you for coming and speaking tonight.
Yeah,
I think
thank
you
you.
opened our eyes to the issue with this. And we've seen it a couple times this past year, so I think maybe it's something we do address as a department and as a board. If you want to reach out, I'd love to pick your brain more on this.
Aside, I can say I've operated that business for the last 24 years. The only time I've ever denied cigarette sales is to a sting. I've never had to deny a cigarette sale to someone other than a sting, which to me means that it's not exactly an epidemic where kids are trying to buy cigarettes underage.
From you guys, other
There
places
are-
in town.
There are issues
Yeah.
with kids trying to buy alcohol with fake IDs because of our proximity to Merrimack College. Alcohol is a problem. Cigarettes, cigarette use in general is significantly less than half of what it was when I first started working and operating that business almost 25 years ago. So that's good food for thought that, if it was something that, kids smoking was as bad of a problem, it's nowhere near the problem as alcohol. And again, the alcohol regulations don't seem to match what tobacco is, so.
Yeah. But
Regardless, again, I appreciate the board's time and consideration. I hope that the next time someone stands here, it gives a little bit more perspective, to the plight that's happening against small businesses right now. It's never been this hard. 25 years, I can tell you, it's never been this hard to have a
Right.
small business.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Ron.
All right.
Okay. Last section of our agenda.
One quick thing. Thank you.
Yes.
Ron. Once again,
Thank you. Thank you.
great seeing you. All right, thanks.
Last section is communications, announcements, and discussions.
We'll make this brief since it's late. COVID is way down. They're lifting all of the restrictions and lifting the public health emergency May 11th. We've got 5 active cases right now in town that have been reported. We're not seeing any major issues. I will defer to Carolyn, see if she has any additions to that.
No, COVID's way down. The only vaccinations I'm getting are some of the people who are coming back up for the summer. But other than that, vaccinations are also not a heavy hitter.
Okay. I will go past the COVID updates and give you a quick update. Our Public Health Excellence Grant, we did advertise for the Shared Services Coordinator position. We've got 25 resumes that I've got a subcommittee going through the resumes now to determine which ones we're going to interview. Next week, we will choose and reach out to the people we want to interview and get that process started. So that's really good.
Yep.
Our other grant, the Community Health Assessment, which Michelle has been working very hard on with us. Thank you for your time. And it's been a lot of time, actually. We are in the planning phase for the goals, the objectives, and strategies to implement our community health improvement plan, which is in the process of being written now. So well underway with that. We're working hard at it, and hopefully it's done probably in the next 2 months. Then we'll have an improvement plan to start working off of and start basing some of our programs on and dedicate some of the resources to.
Great.
So that is that. Anything from Steve? Nothing?
Well, there's something for me.
Yeah, Joe, if you're finished, Joe has some communications, announcements, and discussions.
Okay, Joe, you're up.
Well, if my replacement is confirmed by the select board, the next meeting.
I'm hoping it's the next meeting
So-
because I have passed his name up. I still have a couple phone calls to make. We had some great applicants and a couple of fantastic interviews. I did pass the name up to Melissa last week. I am waiting to hear when they will be appointed by the select board, and then they will be sworn in by the town clerk, and they will be hopefully present at our next meeting.
This is probably my last, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead. This is probably my last meeting.
You resigned in
and-
December.
And I'll be quick. And I am, and the reason that I'm resigning from the board is that I'm moving. So I've been on the board for almost 20 years, and either as a member or as the chairman. And I just want to quickly go over some meetings that have resonated with me over the years. The first Zoom meeting that we had.
Oh, my God.
Look at the laughs I'm getting here. Did someone have a problem how to turn up the volume of that meeting? Who was the chair at that time? Well, that was me. I didn't know how to turn up the volume for our first Zoom meeting. So that meeting left much to be desired. I'm going to try to keep it short but light. I mean, this is a pretty heavy meeting tonight. This has really been a downer. We had to address a local businessman making fake placards for trash trucks. And I can assure you that this person received a very, very steep fine. The fine tonight of $1,000 pales in comparison to what this individual. And these placards are required for trash trucks where they can go in our town. Tobacco regulations, every year about 450,000 Americans die of tobacco-related illnesses. So if you correlate that to the population of North Andover, that will be about 45 or so deaths a year due to tobacco-related products. So what we did is we updated the regulations. We had restrictions on the sales of tobacco. We eliminated menthol and so on and so forth. And much of what we did has been piggybacked by the state. Although we didn't have that $1,000 fine, we had like a $300 fine and so forth. And I can remember that meeting. There was a young intern from a law firm. And he had to refute what we're talking about. He was like cannon fodder to the members of the Board of Health. The poor guy, he was just ripped apart. You want to keep things the same. No further regulations. During the pandemic, a North Andover resident decided to have a very, very big party that I heard about from a friend of mine that works and lives on the West Coast. It was national news. So he came here to refute the fines. And I'm saying to myself, well, this is really going to be interesting. We reduced the fines to a limited extent. But I left with the feeling of, gee, and I can say it because I'm leaving now, I really wish I had been invited to that party. I wanted to go to that party. I wanted to go to that party so bad, I tell you. I'm saying a big party in North Andover. People were arriving busloads, and I didn't know about it. I wasn't invited, so it's bothered me. On a more serious note, the Board of Health and Department of Health, they're really in good hands with the members and in the staff. Michelle, terrific. You, Brian, you can't do any better than this. I'll always look back fondly upon working with the people of the Board of Health and Department of Health. And now, after 20 years, I'm off to pasture.
Thank you for your many years of service and all the jokes.
Did any of you go to that party, by the way, New Year's? I didn't go to that
No,
party.
I was not invited. Awesome. So,
Yes.
thank you for your many years of service.
Yes.
And at that, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. I beat you this time.
I know. I'll second.
Awesome. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks. Before you all leave, Joe?